bow ties may be cool, but unfortunately this one's black and it doesn't show up very well against my background, and they don't really work with polos. I need to find some different color clip-on ones. If anyone can help me out with that, it would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, I know this is a pretty lame intro. Hello everyone, I'm Papa Kenn and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Doctor Who. Today the episode I'm going to be talking about is The Beast Below, the second episode of Series 5 and of course Matt Smith's, the beginning of his era and also the reign of Stephen Moffat. As always, I start to say, my overall feelings about the episode, but that doesn't come till later. So let's get right into it with my favorite parts about this episode. Starting with the Smilers. I will say this, they did look a little bit hokey, but especially in the first few scenes, before the Doctor and Amy actually come in, when it's just the kids at this school, or whatever, I assume it's a school, and all we see are these, like, basically robots, the Smilers, saying, this kid is a good boy or a good girl. And then little Timmy, it's like, bad boy, 0. We don't really learn why that is exactly. I assume it's because he's shy or he was slow to get out of his seat. But the way that the faces transitioned from this probably the most terrifying face in my personal opinion, the smile, just very unsettling from the beginning. But the way it transitioned from that to the very, very serious face, the very, I guess you could say, frustrated face. Once it transitioned for the first time to the demon red-eyed face, well, I guess it bothered me more the second time it happened, but the first time, actually, it was when little Timmy was on the elevator, and it changes to that. I will admit, it was pretty creepy. I was getting a bit of the, like, classic Moffat episode, where there was that very foreboding, dark feeling going on. I'll talk a little bit more about how I feel that feeling went on throughout the episode, but yeah, just, especially in the beginning, I felt like the Smileys, or the Smilers, were, well, one of the stronger parts of this episode. At least the aura they gave off, the feeling they gave, especially when you just saw those empty, smiling faces. That was probably the best part of it, really, was just the initial face, not the transitions. Now, my second favorite part about this episode, well, first of all, the idea of a Starship UK, the way that was all done, just the whole idea of it, the way the Doctor explained it, was just really interesting. The fact that the idea that they took, the entire UK, put it onto this spaceship, traveling toward a new world, a new home, and at least from what I can remember of what they were talking about in the episode, other countries did that as well. But in addition to, that very interesting idea, the fact that it's revealed that Scotland ended up going with their own spaceship, just, it was absolutely hilarious. And actually very timely, considering, there was the whole vote recently as to whether or not Scotland would split off. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but it just seemed, I don't know, I just have a feeling that if we were to have to go into spaceships in the future, that Scotland would probably also want to, have their own spaceship. Let me know if you disagree, but I don't know, it just kind of seems that way to me. Now, my third favorite part about this episode was Liz 10, or essentially Elizabeth X. First of all, badass. She is just awesome. Secondly, the way that the way the mask worked on her, the mask reminded me of the basically the masks that the Clockwork robots were wearing way back in, was that season 2? Or was that season 1? No, that was season 2. Yeah, it reminded me of those. But just the character in general, she was very strong, and I absolutely loved her. She's one that I honestly really do hope shows up at least once more throughout the show, or throughout this season, if not more. She seemed like a really cool character, and one that, I mean, even once we learned the truth about her, the fact that, you know, she has been the queen of this ship for, I guess it was about 300 years, or she's a little bit over 300 years old, something like that. But, you know, even once that truth is revealed, it's not like she becomes a bad character. We just find out, you know, basically more of the truth of what's really going on here. And, yeah, just, like I said, her as a character overall, amazing. And I wanted to hold this off till last because it's definitely not the strongest part of her character, but good lord, she's beautiful. Seriously. I forgot to write down the actress's name, but I'll put it in text here. She is absolutely beautiful. But again, that's not one of the most important parts, but it was definitely something that I noticed from the get-go. It's like even when she was just behind the mask, you know, she's a very beautiful woman. But moving on. My fourth favorite part about this episode was the idea of forgetting. That just the whole way they structured it here, including the way that Amy was pulled into it. You know, she was given the choice to either well, I can't remember what the other choice was. It started with a P, but it was either forget or something. Anyway, but the whole idea of forgetting, and the fact that Amy, unbeknownst to herself, did forget, but made a recording telling her that the doctor needs to get off of the ship, that he needs to get away and not, you know, inspect what's going on, which led to some very interesting, in my opinion, character development for both of them. And I would say their first, well, yeah, definitely their first real argument, which I'm sure that there will be other times that they'll argue throughout this series, but I just found that to be, yeah, and moving just beyond Amy, but the way that all of, I can only assume everyone, or the vast majority of everyone on that ship that learned these things just chose to forget, because, I mean, let's face it, the idea of what they were doing to the Star Whale, which I'll get to in just a second, that's just absolutely horrible. And I mean, and going even beyond that, just, I don't know, in a way maybe it got a little bit too convoluted in the end, but like I said, I definitely did like the idea of forgetting, and that forgetfulness, or the forgetting is being left to the choice of the person, even though not really, because if you didn't choose to forget, you basically got shot into the creature's stomach, and yeah, this is just really weird. But moving on from there, before I start to get even more convoluted, the fifth favorite part of this episode was the Star Whale. And, I mean, from the diagrams that we get from the computer, well, from the computers in the episode, once we find out what the Star Whale is and learn about it, all the way till that final shot. I mean, you could argue the CG might not be that great. I thought it looked decent enough, but just it was a thing of pure beauty. If you can get past the CG, I mean, the idea of the Star Whale and what it was, and the fact that it was being really, in the end, a parental figure to all of these lost souls, despite what they were doing to it. We find out, you know, it came to Earth to save those people, and it was because of the people. They're the ones that, you know, saw this as an opportunity to take this creature and put it into essential, like, slavery and torture, when they didn't need to do that at all. It wanted to save those people, and as soon as it's given the opportunity to get away, it doesn't. It stays. It stays with these people, because it's trying to save them. That's what it wanted to do from the very beginning. And I just absolutely love that idea that, I mean, this creature that, you know, when we look at creatures like whales and even dolphins, I mean, well, some of us can see them as smart creatures, very intelligent creatures. But I don't know that I can think of a single person on this earth that would think that once this creature has been let loose of this torture it's been put through, that the love it has in its heart, well, first of all, that it would have love in its heart, but that it would not just instantly abandon the people that it had been torturing all that time because of what it wanted to do. It was being a parent for it. It was being kind and nurturing to these people when it was the only one left of its kind. I really like that aspect. So the star whale was just amazing. I don't know if more will appear in the series as the show goes along. I guess I'll find out as I go along. But yeah, I really liked it, and I honestly do hope it will. The species will appear at least once more. Maybe we'll find out that there are more of them in the universe. I was going to say galaxy, but more of them in the universe. Hopefully. Now, moving on from there, my sixth and final favorite part of this episode, Amy's victory. And I call it that because at first we think there's only essentially two choices of what can be done. Or the way that the Doctor puts it, three choices. Either one, he sets the whale free and risks all of the people dying. Every person on that ship dying, or killing the whale, or he does what he thinks he has to do, which is basically cause it to go brain dead in a way that it will continue to move through space, but it won't feel the pain. And then Amy I mean, I will admit that the series of flashbacks was a little bit overdrawn. I felt like it could have been cut maybe like, I don't know, 15 seconds shorter or something like that, but that's getting kind of nitpicky. But I feel like she just really achieved victory there, and we got a semblance of her growing as a character and the growth of her relationship with the Doctor. When she thinks back to the things that the Doctor said, when she thinks back to all the things that occurred throughout that episode, and she sees that the whale cares for the people. It was like I was saying a few minutes ago. This whale cares for these people, and it wants to help them. It wanted to help them from the beginning. So just by simply letting it go, it was going to continue doing what it wanted to do in the first place. Now, admittedly, like even the Doctor says later, there's no way she could have known that was going to happen. Everyone could have died. But she had a feeling, and I mean, how many times does that happen throughout the show? How many times does someone basically have a feeling, a very strong feeling, and they act on it, and it ends up saving the day? Especially on this show. So, yeah, I really love the way that played out, and I consider it to be Amy's victory over the impossible choice, really, because even the Doctor was going to lose that impossible choice, from my perspective at least. I mean, well, he was kind of going with a better of three evils, I guess you could say, but in the end, she chose victory and chose correctly. But anyway, moving on from there, let's get into my annoyances with this episode, and there are a fair number of them, admittedly, but I'll try and go through them rather quickly. The first of which is the Smilers. Now I know that they were my first favorite part of this episode, and they were. Again, like the initial face, that just empty smile, and the initial transitions in some of those earlier scenes really worked for me. But eventually, they started to seem kind of silly, especially once it did transition to the evil demonic face more than once. I feel like it would have been more effective if they just transitioned to the frustrated ones. I feel like, in a sense, that would have been a bit more effective, perhaps visually, and that's just like they look frustrated, but they cause these really bad things to happen. Or, probably the part that actually made me laugh, unfortunately, was when we find out that, one, the Smilers can come out of their boxes, and, I mean, we've seen other robot creatures, you know, move very strangely, and that's not bad on its own. But then when we find out some of these people that have been going around, I think they call them the Winders or something like that, but they're essentially half human, half smiler. I don't know, that just seemed completely ridiculous to me. It didn't seem necessary at all. And it just really took away any creepiness factor that they had left at that point. But then again, we didn't really see any smilers in their booths from that point of the episode on. So yeah, I guess they fall more in the middle. They were my favorite in a way early in the episode, but toward the end, really could have done without them, or at least the way that they were done. I feel like had they just kept them to the booths and, I don't know, had them interact with people in different ways, it would have been more effective. But, you know, that's the episode. What are you going to do? Now, my second favorite part of this episode, or my second annoyance with this episode, was the elevator poem girl. I don't even remember what the poem was she said. I know it had something to do with the beast below. But, well, first of all, I couldn't understand what she was saying. I don't know if it's just like a thick English accent or what it is, but I couldn't really understand what she was saying. Luckily, I had closed captions on. But yeah, it was just she seemed out of place. I feel like it would have been better had the Smiler actually said it, since it was shown that they do have vocal capabilities. The little girl just being there and then like her not appearing at all throughout the rest of the episode, just, I don't know, it kind of seemed weird and just made her appearance altogether completely unnecessary in my opinion. My third annoyance with this episode, and this has more to do with the little mini-sode that I reviewed. I'll post a link here in case you missed me doing that, but the mini-sode that comes in between episodes 1 and 2, and in there, the Doctor basically tells Amy that he is an alien. Explains to her that he's an alien. But then there's a little conversation they have when the Doctor and what's her name, Mandy, find her in the voting booth, and he talks about how it wouldn't pick him up because it only reads humans, and it's like she completely forgot that he was an alien. So I wouldn't have noticed this really had I not seen that little mini-sode in between, admittedly, but since I have that, the fact that there is that continuity issue with continuity was just something I couldn't ignore. It's a minor point, definitely a nitpick, but it's still something that bothered me, admittedly. So moving on from there, my fourth annoyance with this episode is that the little girl Mandy, for the most part, is just kind of there. Now she admittedly plays a big part in the beginning because she helps them sort of get on the trail of what all's going on, but it seems like probably the second half of the episode she's just tailing along, just standing there. She doesn't speak any lines for quite a while until little Timmy appears and she says, "Timmy!" So yeah, that was just kind of strange. And actually thinking about it, is it ever shown whether or not Timmy actually remembers her or not, or is his memory just completely wiped? I don't recall whether that was revealed or not. So yeah, that's gonna bother me. I'll have to probably go online and look it up, or watch the end of the episode real quick again. But yeah, that seemed kind of strange. But anyway, her just kind of being there, I don't know. I feel like it could have been different. Like they could have found her again later in the episode once they saved everyone and reunited the kids, or whatever, I don't know. Moving on, my fifth and final annoyance with this episode came right at the end when the phone rang. And we knew that the Doctor had the cell phone, or at least did a while back, that people could call him at. But now he apparently has a phone in the TARDIS. And not only that, but seemingly anyone can call him, because randomly who calls Winston Churchill? Now, if this is something that has happened before in, say, classic Doctor Who, then I will completely forgive this, but the fact that that just kind of comes out of nowhere, and somehow Winston Churchill has the phone number to get a hold of the Doctor when no one else in 4 entire seasons was able to do that. Obviously, other than Rose and Martha, because of the, you know, little cell phone that belonged to Rose initially. Or no, wait, it belonged to... Well, one belonged to Rose and one belonged to Martha. Whatever. Anyway, it doesn't make sense, and it just really bothers me that it's just said, oh, it's basically brought up like, oh yeah, this has always happened. Why not? When really it hasn't. But moving on from there, it's enough with the annoyances. Time for the quote of the episode, and there was actually quite a few lines in this episode that were a bit hard for me to choose from. But I ended up going with the one at the very end of the episode when we're zooming out from the ship and the whale, and we see the whale itself, and it's a line read by Amy. And it goes, "In bed above or deep asleep, while greater love lies further deep. This dream must end, this world must know, we all depend on the beast below." Now, other than the obvious symbolism it has for this particular episode, that little poem right there is just, it's beautiful to me. And that's, I mean, it just encapsulated the end of the episode there so well. And maybe it's just also the way that Amy read it. I don't know, but yeah, I really liked that quote in particular. Now, I know that there are undoubtedly others, possibly better lines that some of you liked, so please let me know what some of those were. But yeah, that was my personal favorite of this episode, was that line right at the end, or that poem right at the end, as read by Amy. And now, my overall thoughts on this episode. I know some of you were disappointed a little bit by my feelings on the 11th hour, but I honestly have to say this episode felt much more comfortable as far as, well, one, me getting to feel like the Doctor is the Doctor for real. It basically, it moved on from that point where I really started to believe in him in the first episode. And, I mean, it brought us to know a little bit more about Amy, her feelings about the whole wedding thing that's going on, which I didn't mention in the previous episode, admittedly, because I just didn't feel like it was a huge point to point out at that point. But yeah, just her whole feelings on that. And again, to get to see the relationship of the Doctor and Amy grow just a little bit more, I found it, you know, truly heartwarming, and I just really liked it. So yeah, I would have to say I enjoyed this episode. Perhaps it's more of a comparison between the initial one and this, but yeah, I guess maybe it's the fact that this episode didn't seem quite as chaotic as the first one did. I know a lot of people really like the high energy, like, you know, rah! Feeling of the first episode, but for me, just having taken so many of these episodes one after the other in, you know, relatively close proximity, it just, that episode felt so different and weird that it was just hard for me to enjoy overall, really. But this episode, it took its time, it had good pacing, and it had a legitimately interesting mystery to it, including a twist that I wasn't expecting, like Liz 10 actually being Elizabeth X. That was pretty cool. And then also the whole Star Whale aspect. Yeah, that was just, I felt like the episode was overall pretty well done. Admittedly, it had issues, but I pretty much am going to find some issues with about any episode, really, so that's nothing different. It's just, you know, I'm pulling out some critiques there. But yeah, overall, I would have to say I enjoyed this episode, and it actually does have me looking forward to the next one. I know that it seemed like some of you in the comments were a little bit worried that I was actually considering stopping with the way that the last episode left me feeling. Well, I assure you that I am going to finish this show, no matter what my feelings end up being on the episodes or even entire seasons as a whole. So yeah, don't be worried about that. I am going to continue on, and thankfully this episode does have me wanting to go into the next episode and see what is yet to come. Now, before I wrap things up, I have a little announcement for you all, and it does concern this particular show. It concerns the Discovering Doctor Who, and it is this. I am currently on a mission to try and get to this season's Christmas special by Christmas. Now, I know that is a lot of room to cover, especially for me, in that span of time, especially with, I'm going to be traveling some for the holidays and everything, but I'm going to do my absolute best to do it, because I just feel like having it fall, or having the Christmas special fall around Christmas would be the best way to go. So yeah, for the time being, I'm going to do my best to get out what I would like to call sort of a rapid fire session. First of all, a minimum of 2 Discovering Doctor Who episodes per week, so they will get at least 1 more of these this week, possibly a 3rd on the weekend. And yeah, well, actually there's going to be that as well. There may be some episodes that will pop up over the weekend as well. If there is, please watch the Facebook, or my Facebook page, or Twitter for announcements of that. I will be sure to let you all know. But yeah, I'm going to do my absolute best to get through this season with enough time to make sure that Season 5's Christmas special will be able to fall right around Christmas of this year. So yeah, that's the big announcement. And moving on from here, we're going to be getting into the episode Victory of the Daleks, where apparently the Doctor and Amy are going to be meeting up with Mr. Winston Churchill. Which, I don't know, maybe they'll explain a little bit about the phone and how that all worked, but probably not. But other than that, everyone, thank you so very much for joining me on this new episode of Discovering Doctor Who. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was worth the wait, and I also hope that the quality of the camera is looking nice on my new Canon. And yeah, I guess from there, I'm going to try a new little closing, because obviously L-on-Z cannot be done anymore, despite the fact that I did it last episode. But Geronimo just doesn't feel right for me, so I'm going to try a little something different recommended by one of the commenters a little while back. So everyone, have a great rest of the week, and I will see you next time on the next Discovering Doctor Who. Fantast, Allons, Onimo!